Welcome to Franchise Empires.
Talk me through, right? You start with a food truck. I mean, now you have, I think, 26 locations or so. But how do you get from food truck to your first brick and mortar location? Like, what happened? What was the mindset of, why did you want to do that? Was it always financial reasons that maybe you started with a food truck?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was largely financial. To get a food truck up and off the ground takes less money than jumping straight to brick and mortar. But really, we had a guy, and it was a guy that I knew, and today, consider him such a close friend and family member, even though he's not. But he really appreciated our hamburgers, and he kept coming, and then, I mean, really, it's a wild story. Ultimately, I remember at one point he was like, "Hey, let's, next time I come or whatever, let's sit out on the patio and grab a hamburger with me." And he just kind of was like, in order to make this thing go, we're going to have to, we need to get you into a brick and mortar. And so, of course, that was like, trying to fill up water tanks every morning and get the gas company to come, put gas in the propane tank. I mean, there were just a lot of limitations that a trailer had versus a brick and mortar store. Anyway, so thankful he was insistent. So him and my dad kind of got together, in me as well, and we sort of said, look, let's try to get this from where we're at today to get a brick and mortar store open. And so we pushed and thankful for him and putting up the money and obviously my dad as well and others. We went out and we raised more money. And so, but that's kind of how we went from food truck to one brick and mortar. And that brick and mortar location opened in 2009. So it was a remodeled Arby's. And man, I was so proud of it. I thought it was just unbelievable. We had, designed it. It was, top of the line. It was, literally, I was just floored and humbled by what had become. This was Hat Creek brick and mortar. And the first week, it was an old Arby's. Had been in Austin for a long time. But I thought it looked totally different. But the first week we were open, somebody walks up to the counter and orders a roast beef and cheddar, roast beef sandwich. I'm like, dude, this thing, it's not an Arby's. How can you even begin to think? So, that was another good kind of humble pie that, even though I thought it wasn't an Arby's, somebody else still mistook it, mistaked it for an Arby's. So anyways, yeah. I think that's a funny story.
It's telling that you still remember it.
I do, dude, because I was like, how on earth could someone ever think this was an Arby's? This is the most beautiful hamburger restaurant in America, and someone still thought it was a place for a roast beef sandwich.
Oh, man. So was that, maybe just, let's call it like a spacey customer, or, did you go through some maybe a lot more lessons that year with running a brick and mortar, and maybe you realized, okay, we have room for food?
Is that exactly the latter? It really did. It really did still look like an Arby's, as much as I didn't think it did. But it was the perfect next kind of phase in hindsight for Hat Creek, and we were able to use that and get better, and then eventually open up a second location a couple years later. But yeah, had room we had to lean in on our branding and continue to dial that in and get it away from looking like an Arby's. So, but no, we learned a lot of lessons, just like we did the food truck. We learned a lot of lessons having our first brick and mortar as well.